bunch of footage and coverage of the Chinese space station, which basically got going here in 2020. And so, yeah, I hadn't even really paid attention to any of this stuff, but they now have one module, basically, and it's pretty hilarious. Kind of like, it's real because it looks even faker than SpaceX. So, yeah, I watched quite a few hours of these lectures that Wang Yaping, she's the first female TychoNOT. So the Chinese astronauts are called TychoNOTs. Tycho just means space, apparently. But yeah, so it's pretty... There's so much I could say, because I started out just kind of working on this video like I was just going to talk about the hilarious space fakery that you see in terms of, just about everything, from the actual rocket launch that looks kind of Michael Bay-ish. Looks a little CGI to me, especially with all these like panels falling off that are supposedly... People have made videos about it, explaining why all these panels are falling off the rocket, and they're heat shields that don't even make it. But even that looks kind of CGI to me, I will say. It's like a little too many of these things falling off. And a lot of the jet, like the flames coming out, all of it looks pretty like layered or whatever. So yeah, there's all that. But then where it just gets like really ridiculous is that, okay, so in just basically 2 decades, they've gone, they've caught up from like having no manned space flight, which the United States and Russia had in the programs in the 60s, to orbiting, to putting a first man in space and doing an EVA, to then having your own orbiting space station and spending billions and billions of dollars to do all this so that you can participate in this great race for space and all the technological advancements that have been promised through that for many, many decades, right? But like, here you are. Okay, so you finally get some people in space, and what do? It's all about playing with water bubbles. Like, not even kidding. There is so many water bubble tricks, stuff that I've never seen, and stuff it's like, I don't know, man. Okay, some of them that don't even really have to do with zero gravity. It's just like there's this Olympic rings thing, and they're, of course, doing it, being broadcast to all these school children all across China. And there's a bunch of them assembled at this space center, which I believe is in Shanghai, which is, their manned space flight center, basically. I forget what it's called, but like their equivalent of Houston is in Shanghai. But, yeah, so they're doing these lectures. Well, they call them lectures, but basically what they do on the ISS, and they do like little school programs and answer questions and all that. But it's this is CCP style, so it's kind of like, it's like everything. They're just doing all the exact same stuff, but with the perfectionist, Chinese communist performance, kind of, and to where it becomes. It's revealing, I will say. I think anyone who's been kind of following along and thinks this whole space fakery thing is nonsense, or the like the idea of questioning the ISS is just preposterous, then I strongly recommend you to watch some Shenzhou footage, just whatever. But yeah, so this Olympic rings thing, it's just changing the colors of the liquid, by adding different chemicals, and it stays in these little tracks of the rings because of surface. So it's like all their quote unquote experiments are all about playing with water and demonstrating the surface tension, and also showing that, oh, look, there's no gravity, like, this is some brand new concept, apparently, that, like, look, you can't turn around because there's nothing to hold on to, or it's, I don't know. I'm not trying to mock it, but it's just, it's wild. I mean, to the point where they're doing this other thing over here, and the whole time this jar of water is sitting on a table, open, with, water that's just sitting in the jar because of the surface tension, apparently. And then they even kind of toss it around, and it stays in the bottom because the centrifugal force, or whatever. But yeah, you can even see that she's able to just kind of like stand on the ground and hold in place. I don't even think she's like hooked into a strap or anything. So whatever kind of microgravity is going on in the Chinese space station, it does actually even seem to be different than stuff we've seen before. So, but yes, in Shanghai is where they have the same thing with all the mission control, and where they train, and they have the big pool, the big swimming pool with the mock-up of everything. I mean, and it's totally not because they're filming everything in the pool. They're filming all the EVA stuff in the pool. And these spacesuits are basically just big, diving suits. Now, of course, you have SpaceX and Blue Origin, and they're in Texas and California and blah, 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 blah. But basically, yeah, this is a studio. This is like your TV studio control room, controlling all the different feeds, and maybe you're filming right next door. Just suggest that, yeah, not only your country has been doing that, but like many countries, all the so-called spacefaring nations are participating in this hoax to some degree or another. I get that is probably just as overwhelming and audacious to a lot of people as well. I get it. I get why that's difficult, but I think the more I kind of think about that idea in the context of so many other things that we see going on, where, is it a real military conflict, or is it just a massive network of feeds and clips and reading off a script and press releases? And how big of a dog can you wag if you have enough people willing to go and say whatever they're told to say in front of the camera or off camera or whatever the case may be? When you're talking about things that are involving a very small handful of people way up in the sky that nobody can actually verify, versus things that are going on in the ground and in cities and in countries where millions of people live, faking this stuff is actually kind of peanuts compared to a lot of the media-driven alchemy that's going on all kinds of levels. But the beauty is that we don't have to be stuck just being ping-ponged back and forth between all these humanistic narratives. It's like all these Hegelian things between like two opposing humanistic sides. You can't really fight for freedom, or fight for freedom of speech, or the sacredness of individual rights, human rights, unless you have a reason for why they even exist in the first place. And that is why I think scientism is so crucial to the entire, whatever you want, globalist agenda, transhumanist agenda, anti-human agenda. I think scientism is so crucial to the entire, whatever you want, globalist agenda, transhumanist agenda, anti-human agenda. By worshiping this false idea of humanity, renders humans as ultimately having no intrinsic value, and you can do whatever you want to them. By worshiping this false idea of humanity, renders humans as ultimately having no intrinsic value, and you can do whatever you want to them. By worshiping this false idea of humanity, renders humans as ultimately having no intrinsic value. You can do whatever you want. You can do whatever you want.
Put our attention to the sky, to heaven, we don't see God anymore. We see outer space. We see an infinitely large and forever expanding empty void where we mean nothing. Like, how obvious is it now that it's a complete psyop? Where we put our attention to most becomes a significant part of who we are. It's true. Where we commit our time and energy to, our conscious attention, an energetic exchange takes place, and depending on what that thing is we're putting our attention to, it can empower us or disempower us, physically, mentally, spiritually. Imagine the psychological effects when our attention is taken away from God and heaven and replaced with nonsense in an empty void. It's disempowering. And the last thing these people in power are going to do is anything that empowers the people they are trying to control. They know how our minds work. They know how and what to do with our attention. Outer space is a form of mind control, a very useful one, and for some people, impossible to break. So much they don't teach us because it empowers us. There's an immense power in belief. That's why they devised and created science, so that you believe them just because they're a scientist. There's an immense power in truth, because truth frees people. Truth doesn't control people. That's what lies do. Lies control. This is why they will always lie. They make the lies appealing, like outer space is so cool, and they make the truth ugly and hard to face. Over time, lies become preferable over truth. When people are believing the lies are truths, they are not in the real world. A dissociated mind is the easiest mind to control. So the bigger the lie, the more the disconnection. And they made space as big as it could possibly be, haven't they? Expanding forever, and you're just a speck. They don't teach us about life after death, God, religiously or not, our origin, or why we are here. This is what the creation of the Big Bang and the creation of evolution are for. The Big Bang suggests we came from nothing, just randomness and have no purpose. And evolution is suggesting that we're no better than an animal and we're evolved from monkeys. It's disempowering to the human being, and there's nothing more empowering than to know who we are, to know where we're from, why we're here, and who and what God is. The Big Bang and evolution, they're not real. They're made to deprecate, to put down the human being. I know it's hard, but it's true. Outer space is not real. They created it for tons of reasons, but each reason shares the same foundational purpose: to disconnect the human being from the natural world and the Creator. Outer space is the perfect template for mind control. It provides a fertile foundation, one that they can keep planting more seeds and more psyops upon, like a blank, empty canvas. They've done everything and anything to keep our attention away from these empowering things because of how easily we can get it back. It just takes awareness. It's all it takes. And I keep saying that. There is a great power in our awareness. The only reason the brainwashing works is because we are not aware of it happening, how it works, or that it even exists. But all it takes is awareness. By not being aware of its existence or how it works, they are able to sneak in the back door of our subconscious, which goes unnoticed. Once we become aware of this happening, it can no longer control us. It's that simple. Can you imagine next time you pray, knowing exactly where your prayer is going, knowing that it's being received, knowing that when you look up, there's more than just an empty black void with magically floating balls in a lifeless universe that's expanding on and on forever towards nothing with no certain end and no evidence that God exists? That we're not just a speck in the cosmos, or a single grain of sand in a desert, or a drop of water in the sea of godless nothingness? To be certain that you're created, and to be certain that this place is created for a purpose, there's nothing more empowering than that. To know we're the center of the universe, to know we're here for a reason, whether that reason be to fulfill some destined mission or to simply live long, fulfilling lives, it doesn't matter, because we would know. We would know with certainty. And that's where anxiety comes from, is the uncertainty, so all that pain would be gone. They created space and turned our home into an impossible ball to disconnect us from God and have full access to control us. By returning to the natural world and being aware of these things, we can at last be free and return home. So if this is all new concepts to you, if you've never considered that evolution, the Big Bang, or outer space might not exist, it's time to start considering that. Because I can tell you one thing, when you break it down and you look at the real evidence, the only reason people even believe that there's an outer space is because of the moon landing. Guess what? Any lie, especially that big, it always needs some sort of validation to trick people to believe it's a truth. The moon landing was that validation. The moon landing was that validation. Was that validation.
It's ultimately having no intrinsic value, and you can do whatever you want to them. You can do whatever you want to your fellow man. If he's not created in the image of God, and not part of the family of humanity, we're all ultimately related, going back to Noah and Adam and Eve. I mean, there's something, just that amount of biblical truth alone, if you really internalize that and really understand that we're all, cousins in the grand scheme of things, not with primates, but with a man and a woman that God made in the garden. It's beautiful.